Building a wooden canoe requires a level of craftsmanship I can only imagine. Rebuilding one falls into that same category. We'll be following UP Chapter Wooden Canoe Heritage Association member Craig Kitchen of Marquette through the process of returning a 100-year-old boat back to the water. And a look at rock climbing. 9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors.
I'm a member of the Wooden Canoe Heritage Association, and that's an organization, a national organization, that the whole mission of it is to keep these boats alive, to keep them, the history of them alive, and to restore them so that they'll continue to be around. And right now there's about 20 chapters in the United States and in Canada and England. And we just preserve these boats as much as we can. We were in contact with a individual, Kathy Kloss from Gwyn, who is another member of the Wooden Canoe Heritage Association. She's pretty much an expert on B.N. Morris canoes. So we're describing different things about it, and she finally dated it to someplace between 1905 and probably about 1908 is when it was made. It had some structural problems with it. There was some cracked ribs and some planking and stuff had to be replaced. The canvas was good on it, so at least it would hold the boat afloat, so I was able to paddle it. But with the structural problems in it, we knew the canvas had to come off of it. So last fall I started restoring it and have taken it over to an individual's place, a shop in Boulder Junction, Wisconsin, Dave Osborne. He has a business restoring canoes. Between Dave and myself, we've spent the winter pretty much getting it to where it's at now. And we figured a couple more months and it'll be back in the water. These 4 ribs were completely broken and they had a joint in them, holding them together. And Dave took the ribs out one at a time and replaced them, and replaced the planking here because the planking was also broken. He replaces the ribs one at a time so the boat will keep its shape, and he also puts a brace behind it so that when he shapes the steamed ribs, they'll take on the contour of the boat. What we try to do is we try to keep the boat as close to original as we can. So we want a boat that is a 1908 to 1910 boat instead of having one that is completely restored and looks like a new old boat. So we'd rather have some of the integrity of the old boat with it if we can do that in any way. And the deck here, this is a mahogany deck, and it would be real hard to replace this deck and have it match the other one. And what Dave did is he fiberglassed the crack that was in it, and he took the bolt out of it, and he put some wood filler in there, and then he clamped it together so it would hold its shape. And so now we'll be able to have the original deck on the boat still. He also replaced the ends, these are the inwales here. He replaced the tips on them because they were all rotted, and then the inner stem here, he replaced that too because the tip of that was also rotted. This will all have to be smoothed down and feathered down so it's the same shape as the canoe. And so we'll replace some planking here so there'll be something to staple the canvas to. The wood here was all rotted and cracked from past use, so we replaced that. And then these were all cracked from where the damage was to the ribs, so Dave replaced the planking there too. So in reality, not very much of the planking had to be replaced, which was good. In a place like this is from an old B.N. Morris, and what he tries to do is he tries to use older pieces whenever he can so that it's not as difficult to match the wood. You can see here where the stem was replaced, Dave replaced that because this was all rotted also. And then the planking here will have to be all sanded down so that it's the same shape as the hull. because when the canvas goes back on it, every bit of this will show up. So it has to be sanded down smooth. We'll check all of the nails and make sure that the nails are not sticking up, because they'll show through the canvas. One of the things about the B.N. Morris is they had what's called a cap rail, and you can see the nails from it. And for this one here, it has mahogany cap rails, and also mahogany cap rails on the outrails. So when this is finished, you won't see any of the top of the inwale here. It'll all be finished off with a mahogany trim.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Race Driven, your source for premier power sports products.
This is a sailing canoe. I've made a new seat for it, and this has to have a hole drilled in it for the sailing, for the mast to go in. It has to be finished being shaped yet, sanded, and then I'll cane it. Caning is a process where there's a natural wood fiber that what we do is we weave it. We'll run strips across it, strips this way, and then we'll have diagonal ones. And so it's strong, you know, and it is comfortable to sit on, and it also looks nice. The seat is right about here, and then the mast sticks up, and there's a brace that goes across, and the dagger boards go down, and that's what stabilizes the canoe when it's under sail. And then there's also a rudder that goes on the back of it. It'll be interesting to see it all put back together. The way that I got into it was my wife and I moved back to the UP in 1996, and I wanted a kayak, but I couldn't afford one, so I built one. And since then I built 13 kayaks, and I built 5 wood strip canoes, and this boat here will be my 3rd canvas boat that I've restored or reconditioned. And I got into this by I was at a place called Sylvania Track. This was many years ago, and there was a gentleman walking down the trail, and he had a beautiful red canoe, and it was made by a guy named Joe Saliga in Ely, Minnesota. Now, Joe Saliga, I think he was in his 90s when he died, and he was working in his shop basically up until the time he died, and just a real incredible builder. And I saw the canoe and I thought, it's a beautiful thing. And then at some point after that, I got a chance to paddle one, and they paddle completely different than the new canoes. And there's just a finesse to the canoe, and just the aesthetics of all of the wood together and how it works together is just, they're beautiful, and that's why I enjoy them. Part of the thing I like about the canoe is its history too. The original owners, they have a camp down in Cowboggum Lake, and they're from Negaunee, and they've owned the canoe since 1947. So, and Mr. Waters was, I think, a Boy Scout troop leader, and so the canoe was used for Boy Scout outings, and it was used for fishing and hunting outings, and so the boat has been used extensively, not necessarily sailed extensively, but fished out of and hunted extensively. There was some pictures of the canoe on the top of a truck on a moose hunting trip to Canada, and I think that was in 1962 or 64. And then there's also a picture of the kids, the Waters kids in the canoe, and that was either 1962 or 1964. One of the pictures was a picture of the original owner, Cliff Waters, and he was paddling across Goose Lake outside of Marquette, and that was taken in 1958. I have to finish cleaning up the wood here so that it all looks natural, and then varnish it.
That's the next step.
That's the next step, is varnishing it. And then again, all the rails, the inwales have to be all finished out too. So, and then once it's varnished and the hull is all sanded, and then we'll put a coat of linseed oil on the sand, on the planking, and then we'll have it ready to canvas it. and then Dave Osborne is going to canvas it. We put the canvas back on, and then there's a filler that goes on the canvas to make it real sturdy and waterproof. So we'll fill the canvas so that it's smooth, get it all smoothed out, and then we'll paint it. Once it's painted, then we put the cap rails back on the canoe, put the seats and the thwarts back in it, and then we put it in the water.
906 Outdoors is brought to you by Cooking Wild Seasonings. Make it fresh, make it yours.
Where the canoe's at right now is it's ready to be varnished, and we've got all of the components, a lot of the components that go with the canoe that we'll be preparing as we continue with the restoration. This is a floorboard that came in the canoe. It runs the whole length of the bottom of the canoe, and this is the color that the inside of the canoe was when I got it, and it all had to be stripped off. Gives you an idea of just how thick the finish was on the inside of the boat. And you can see there's a couple splices in it, and those can be fiberglass so we can keep the original floorboard in it. And there's a hole here, and that's where the mast step goes, for the sailing mast is. This is called a cap rail, and these cover the top and the side of the shear line of the canoe. This is one of the things that is kind of unique to B.N. Morris. It really gives the boat a real finished look. These are the dagger boards here. Again, these dagger boards are around 100 years old, so they're showing some wear in them. The canoe seat here will have a hole drilled in it. The mast will go down through the hole in the seat. That's how the mast sets into the canoe. The thwarts have already been cleaned and varnished. They need another coat of varnish on them yet, but it's nice mahogany thwarts. Okay, the rudder fastens onto the back of the canoe, like so. And then there's lines on this, and that's how you steer the canoe, is with the lines from the inside the cockpit. There's metal things that come off the back of the canoe that these set into. This is the original seat that came in it, and it has a very unusual caning to the seat. The book that I have on caning calls it a spider webbing.
With Morris canoes, originally a lot of them were stained the mahogany color so that the inside of the boat and the inside of the boat matched the mahogany gunnels and thwarts and decks and seat frames, but we have the choice of not doing that. If you like, Craig likes the natural color on the inside, and a lot of the original Morris boats were left natural, but it was the buyer's decision to do that. If they got them straight from the factory, they came with the inside stained. It was called pigeon blood, but that was just the color, the mahogany color.
There's a couple different things that the varnish does. It also protects the wood from the harshness of the sun. So that's one important quality about the varnish.
But you do smooth it down between coats.
Yeah.
It's like refinishing furniture.
The first one is kind of a no-brainer because you see it get sucked into the wood. So you know that it's going to need more than one coat. But then you'll see it start to build up, and then it has a richness to the finish when you see that the wood grain is completely filled up.
You just kind of keep going until you say, ah, that looks nice. The canoe builders had an eye to making their canoes artistically beautiful, not just functional. And of course, these canoes are based on what the Native Americans did, which also involved putting designs into the bark, and it's been a mode of artistic expression from the beginning. So we're just carrying it on, and that's why it's good to let your own artistic expression come forth. The ribs on a Morris canoe are tapered. They're thicker here, and then they go up and become narrower, and that's pretty typical of a canoe built in Maine. There's a lot of finesse in just the ribs on a canoe like this. And it's one reason that people are attracted to the old canoes, and because you appreciate the finesse in the woodworking. I counted up the number of Morris canoes in our database just yesterday, and there were 305. And we know that there were more than 20,000 that were built between 1891 and 1920. A little over 300 have come out of the woodwork, and there are probably at least that many in barns and boathouses. And one of the types of canoe that the Morris factory workers made at Old Town, they had been making a cording canoe that was used on Belle Isle in Detroit. In that time, a young man used a canoe to impress his lady, so if the livery had really pretty canoes, they would get the business of these young men who were trying to impress the ladies. It's amusing because they'd have those Victrolas with morning glory horns and tons of pillows, and the lady would just sit and recline against a backrest, and the gentleman would paddle wearing his straw hat and tie and white shirt.
But some of the workmanship of some of the older canoes, especially the cording canoes, you can't beat the workmanship. I think it's too expensive now to do the quality workmanship that used to be done on some of these old canoes. Or an example of that, here's the caning here, and how elaborate that was, and how long it probably took somebody to do that.
Be sure to tune in next week for more on the Canoe Restoration Project. Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom. From the top of a big rock is a great way to see the UP, and sometimes half the fun is getting there.
Be the top of our rock climb. So under this side here, where we have our ropes kind of leading off over to, is going to be where we'll actually be climbing. So we're going to do a short little hike down to the base of this little cliff face. It's about 50 feet or so. So not too tall, but tall enough that you're still going to have an exhilarating climb. You can see our two anchors here on these trees, which are going to be supporting our climbing rope. So just you guys can kind of see what is going on that end of things. Are you guys ready to rock and roll? So myself and the other rock climbing guides, we act as your belayers. So it's our job to kind of stay at the bottom and use our belay devices, which is this right here. What it is, it's a friction device. So as you guys climb, we use the belay device in order to kind of help capture your weight. So that way, if you do take a fall, it's only going to be a couple inches, and it helps us support your weight as you are climbing, making the process incredibly safe and secure. This is a belay device. This is going to be pretty much your safety mechanism besides your harnesses and the rope as you guys are climbing. So as you guys climb up, we take out the slack from the rope as you guys ascend. And when you guys kind of stop climbing or take a break, we hold down in the break position. So when you're holding down the rope like so, this belay device creates friction amongst the rope, so that I can crank on this as hard as I want, and all I need is pretty much just like one little finger or just the rope kind of being pushed in this downward loop like so. And that rope's going to go nowhere, just so you guys kind of know what's going on. No, you don't do it. We will do all the belaying. That way you guys can focus on taking photos and you guys can focus on climbing and having fun. Okay. Alrighty? All right. Awesome. Now as we're setting up the belayer's side and the climber's side of the rope. So the side that's closest to the wall, like the one on my right hand, is going to be for the climber, whereas the belayer is going to be the side that's kind of coming off of the wall. Yeah, so a good thing to do is kind of map out your handholds before you start climbing. There you go. Nice job. Yeah, so like we said before, climbing is a lot about using your feet. So your hands kind of act as like anchor points, stepping up with your feet instead of pulling up with your hands. And your hands are kind of just to keep your body close to the wall. Nice, beautiful. Just like all of our other activities, this is family friendly, meaning pretty much anyone can come out here and do it. It's a combination of a hiking and rock climbing. We have two different routes that are climbable, ranging from everywhere from easy to medium and some even more challenging routes as well. So we come out here, we set up our anchors onto these trees. We throw our ropes over the edge of the cliff that we'll be doing our climbing on. We do a nice little hike down right next to a river, and then we do our climbing. So in rock climbing, there's a term called the crux, and the crux is the hardest part of the problem. For the black rope climb, where Hannah is right now is the crux of the problem. So once you can lift that orange rope, you got this. Yeah, there you go. The equipment we're using today are static climbing ropes. In addition with our anchor systems, which are made from highly rock climb rated carabiners and webbing. Everyone will be getting harnesses and helmets to kind of help aid our climbers as well as keeping everyone safe and secure.
You touch that orange rope? Awesome! Yeah.
Some kind of basic rock climbing technique is a lot of people, they kind of imagine rock climbers as being super burly, tough individuals. But rock climbing is a lot more of body control and body positioning than it is just brute strength. So it's a lot about using your feet, focusing on using your leg muscles as being your driving power and your hands as more as kind of anchors as we go up the rock climbing wall. I like to describe rock climbing as a combination of chess and yoga on the rocks. So it is very much a mind game as much as it is a kind of physical challenge. Awesome! Great experience, oh, of course.
Even though I didn't make it.
It's still hug-worthy either way.
No, I feel good about it.
Yeah, you should.
Feel free to join us on Facebook or visit us at 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we invite you to join us next week for another adventure right here on 906 Outdoors.